Hey, adrianducao here, coming back for the episode 2 of my journey on personal finance. I'm going to uh, tackle the fixed income first, followed by the alternative investment, and we're going to discuss last the equities because there's a lot to discuss on the equities side. Basically, we will going to discuss basics, fundamental analysis, and technical analysis. So we're going to discuss first the fixed income, followed by the alternative investments, and then equities, so we could um, get everything out of the way. Basically, what is fixed income? As I've mentioned, if you watch the episode 1, fixed income is debt instrument. So what do you mean by um, fixed income being a debt instrument? Well, basically, ito yung sinasabi nating lending out ng money sa either government to companies. Basically, the reason why we call it a debt instrument, it's because we, the investor, it's either a retail investor, an institutional investor, or some sort of an investor is giving or lending out money to the specific bond issuer, which is the government or the corporate. So bonds is an agreement, basically a debt agreement or a series of uh, uh, investor to government or investor to corporate, stating that we have a certain amount of money lended out to specific issuer of the specific bonds. There are different kind of bonds that we can invest into. Here in the Philippines, we have so-called T-bills or treasury bonds or treasury bills. They are actually being issued by Treasury, the Bureau of Treasury here in the Philippines. There are several treasury bonds that was being issued yearly. There are some that are being auctioned. These are the bonds whose actually being auctioned out to the same investors who invested in. As you can see right here, the coupon rate or the interest rate for the 7-year bonds that was issued last July 10 of 2021 is actually 3.75%. That's per annum rate. It says here that the remaining life for these treasury bonds is 6 to 10 months, or 6 and 10 months. This bond will going to mature basically on August 12 of 2028. So there are auction dates that was being provided. You can buy these specific treasury bonds that was being offered publicly on the given date, which is October 5, upcoming October 5. So that will be um, upcoming Tuesday. So this is one type of bond that was being issued by the Treasury. Another type of bond is a retail treasury bond. I think this is much lower coupon rate. I think this would last at least 3 years before its maturity. Let's try to search for that. Retail treasury bonds. So the latest one that we have is the RTB 25, Retail Treasury Bond 25, issued by the same bureau, the Bureau of Treasury. So basically, they're going to give you a specific coupon rate. For this one, available March 2021. What's the 10-year date? Let's try to check. Yeah, it's for 3-year maturity. So the other one is the Treasury Bonds for 7 years has a coupon rate of 3.75%. However, for RTB, it's a much lower coupon rate of 2.375. So if you're going to try and set an example, for example, you're going to invest 100K to the RTB. After 3 years, there will be a return of 5.7 compared to the time deposit that is only issuing or offering 1.125%, which is much lower return after 3 years of 2.7. So yeah, this is actually their main selling point because they do offer a much bigger return compared to the time deposit. Time deposit can also be considered as a fixed income due to the fact that we have a fixed rate of return in a given time frame. So basically, that's it. That's the RTB. We have uh, treasury bonds or T-bills. We have RTB, and we also have premium bonds or so-called price bonds. The main difference of the regular treasury bonds and RTB compared to premium bonds has a lower coupon rate or interest rate per annum. However, the maturity date is only for a year period, 1 year. And the selling point of price bonds is that they do have quarterly draw for specific prices. The one that we have right now is quarterly draw for, I think, 10 winners of 50,000, uh, 20 winners of, if I'm not mistaken, that's 20,000 per draw, and some grand winners. Um, that is a per quarterly draw, and that is their main selling point. I think the dividend pay for this one is actually tax free. I'm not so sure if this is tax free or if they do include the 20% um, withholding tax whenever you receive the dividend payout per quarter. So let's see. We're currently on the Premium Bonds 2 or Price Bonds 2. Coupon rate is much lower compared to the two bonds that was being issued by the Treasury. So if you're going to invest a specific amount of money, we're also going to receive a specific return after the maturity date of 1 year. So going back to the discussion, there are only two types, or there are only three types of bonds that was being issued by the Philippine Treasury that I know of. Yan lang yung nakita kong yan lang yung nakita kong bonds na pwedeng mag-invest ang retail investor as of the moment. But preferably, if you're going to invest in a bond uh, investment vehicle, I think it's logical to invest a higher amount on these bonds due to the fact that 3.75% is way too low. It's way too low to invest on for the time period, which is 7 years, including this. uh, 3-year maturity period, you're only going to get 2.375% of interest rate. So maliit yung balik. If you're going to check out the Premium Bonds, you're not actually hoping to have a big return on this due to the fact that you only have 1.25% of interest rate. However, their main selling point was these prices that you're going to have. So they're actually offering this to um, entice the investors in order for them to provide or invest with the treasury. So that is the bonds that I know of. There's also corporate bonds. Corporate bonds in Philippines. Um, if I'm not mistaken, BDO and Security Bank also offers corporate bonds. Not too sure about the interest rate. We can check it out. That's corporate bonds in Philippines. So yeah, there are corporate bonds that was being issued by big companies such as Ayala. Ayala, they're offering fixed rate bonds. Metrobank, San Miguel or SMC, Aboitiz, and such. But what's the rate? Yeah, they do have a coupon rate or interest rate of 6.6 percent per annum. The reason why that the corporate bonds have such a high level of return or coupon rate, because they're also high risk. There's a big tendency that these companies can't um, provide specific payment for some reason. For example, they do default on their bonds due to the fact that they're filing for bankruptcy, or they do have some issues on some of the department. Probably they won't be able to pay up the bonds to the shareholders, although even though the shareholder or even though the investors were receiving dividend payout per year. For example, the Ayala had fucked up their projects and whatnot. So those are the reason why they do have higher return than the government bonds. So that is the corporate bond or example of corporate bonds. We also have something called a junk bonds, but I'm not so sure where you can be able to invest in a junk bonds. Uh, Junk bonds will going to provide a much higher return than the corporate bonds, because they are basically called junk bonds or high yield bonds, because they're being issued by small companies or small firms. So they do have a tendency or a higher tendency to default on their bonds. That's the reason why they're called junk bonds in the first place. But here in the Philippines, I'm not so sure where you can be able to get one. Um, there are some articles from Rappler and Philstar or different sites like Manila Bulletin, but there are no specific um, details on where or who's issuing it. Maybe you need to contact a specific broker, like prime brokerage. Maybe these bonds are only available for high net worth individuals, but I'm not so sure about junk bonds. Moving on to the next type of fixed income security is UITF, or Unit Investment Trust Funds. Basically, sometimes the mutual funds and UITFs are being interchanged quite oftenly by some. However, there are big difference between UITFs and mutual funds. Basically, UITFs are being issued by private sectors or private company. However, for mutual funds, I'm not so sure if I'm actually providing correct info here, but for mutual bonds, these are being issued by the banks. Oh, I think I interchanged it. These are issued by banks, and these are issued by um, private sector. Let's try to search about UITF and mutual fund. Yeah, UITFs are issued by the banks and mutual funds are owned by companies or private sector. Uh, company, company slash private sector. So UITF is actually um, pooled funds. Basically, if we're going to invest in UITF, it's not just you that investing in that fund, but it is comprised by at least 1,000 or millions of retail investors, or probably sometimes it is comprised by retail investors with the institutional investors. If you're going to invest in a unit investment funds, um, you actually you own a unit, or you own an ownership in that said fund. However, for mutual fund, if we're going to invest on it, you own an ownership in the company. So sometimes UITF, depending on the uh, investment that they're going to take, sometimes their investments are comprised by uh, equity, bonds, which is either issued by the Treasury, T-bills or RTB, so they can upset the risk that was being given by the equity, since they are marked as safe investment. And other stuff, junk bonds or high return, maybe REITs. Same thing with mutual fund. We're going to do the same thing. Um, the return for UITF and mutual funds are minuscule. Maliit lang yung kita for UITF and mutual fund. It's not that big. You can feel the return after a period of 3 to 5 years. You won't get, a high return from mutual fund or UITF immediately. It's for a long-term investment. You can't do short or medium term. For time deposits, uh, yeah, you can definitely consider this as fixed income security. However, they have low return. Um, the maturity period for time deposits are as follows. Sometimes they do offer 2 months or 30 days, 1 month, 1 to 6 months. But there are time deposits that last for at least 1 to 5 years. I mean, yeah, 5 years. Yeah, low and slow return. So just to add to UITF, you can actually invest UITFs with what company is this? Seedbox or Atram Capital. So you can buy UITF or units of UITFs here in the Atram. You can also buy mutual fund in Atram. So there are several type of funds that you can invest into. However, you need to, check your risk appetite. If you are, um, if you really want to invest in a high risk fund or conservative fund, something like that. Same thing with the UITF. So there are different or several choices for the UITF. They do present their year-to-date um, performance, which can be seen here. Some funds are performing well, some are not. They do have qualified, you know, like this BlackRock Investment Management. So BlackRock is one of the biggest, I think they're a hedge fund or company for investing or investment banks, something like that. So these are their past for performance. You can also check previous years, but the return is, it's moderate and slow. You can also buy these on uh, Ginvest from Gcash. The minimum investment is 50 pesos per unit, but that would depend on the type of bonds or funds that you're looking into. There you go. But if you're going to ask me if these are good investment, you can say that these are good investments. Pwede na. Pero ang issue lang is maliit yung minimum investment. Kung ako tatanungin, kailangan medyo isagad mo na yung pwede mong ilagay dito. Yung talagang hindi mo gagalawin for the next 6 to a year period para at least lumago konti or may makuha kang return. However, these are not safe. Well, it can be considered a safe investment. However, wala kasing pure 100% na safe type of investment. There are times na bababa yung invested amount or yung value ng hawak mong units due to the fact that naka-base lang to sa performance ng fund. By the way, pwede nyo rin palang bilhin ang um, bonds na ini-issue ng Treasury sa Bonds.ph. Reputable naman, may mga bonds akong hawak sa Bonds.ph. You can actually buy this if you already have a Union Bank account. You can use that logged in to bonds.ph, and then you can purchase available bonds that was being issued by the Treasury Department. Yeah, yun lang yung pwede nyong kunin. Walang halong UITFs or mutual fund. Bonds lang talaga. Walang corporate bonds. Corporate bonds kailangan yung bilhin sa security bank. Corporate bonds, itong mga to, issued by the DBP or yung state-owned bank. Security bank, meron din. Pero syempre, bahala na kayong tumingin kung paano i-purchase, kung anong fees, basta eto lang yung tinatakil natin. Even for security bank, meron silang dollar-denominated corporate bonds. Yung mga 10-year ship na 5 to 25 years. Not too sure, pwede nyo ata itong for example, gusto nyo na siyang ibenta after a year or two. For example, nagsawa kayo dun sa return na maliit, pwede nyong i-sell sa secondary market, which is yung nangyaring auction yearly by the Treasury. Time deposit, yeah, something like that. So useful links, bonds.ph for treasury bonds, for UITFs and mutual funds sa Atram or sa Ginvest by Gcash. Ayan, din nyo pwedeng kunin. Meron din pa palang ibang way kung paano makuha to. UITFs and whatnot. Pwede kayong pumunta sa iba't ibang insurance company. Nag-i-issue din sila ng UITFs like Sun Life. Sun Life, ang alam ko, meron silang offerings, different offerings. Sun Life, mutual funds. So, mga investment products nila. So, nakadepende sa kung conservative ba yung investor, kung moderate, balance, growth, aggressive. Let's take a look for the aggressive. So, ito yung mga laman ng mga funds na to. So, they're mirroring PSEI, or they have Philippine equities and then actively managed funds, meaning tinatrade nila yung equities na hawak nila, hindi lang sila nagba-buy and hold. Feeder funds, yung global feeder funds, mga tech companies, mga startups, or probably kaka-IPO lang ng mga companies. Same thing. Ito yung mga high risk, high reward. Wala kasing low risk, high reward eh. Yun yung mga matuturing mo na scam kasi kaya mataas ang reward kasi mataas din yung risk ng investment vehicle. So basically that's it. That's the stuff for fixed income securities. Wala naman ng iba ata na fixed income na hindi ko na-tackle, kundi ito lang yung pinaka-main. Bonds, UITF, mutual fund, and time deposits. So ayun, that's it. We'll move on to the alternative investment on the next episode, and followed by the equities, and then budgeting like a business.